Are you Dale? Excellent. Alright, so your wife is missing? Well, I don't know if she's missing or if she just left, so.
Dee Ann Warner co-owned a $1 million trucking business, raised 5 children, and lived in a beautiful Michigan farmhouse. Yet on April 24, 2021, she disappeared so completely that it took investigators 3 years to find her body, hidden in a fertilizer tank on her own husband's property. At 52 years old, Dee Ann Warner had built the kind of life that looked perfect from the outside. She co-managed a successful trucking and fuel distribution business with her husband Dale from their sprawling farm in rural Lenawee County, Michigan. She was devoted to her 5 children, 4 stepchildren from Dale's previous marriage and 1 daughter from her own. Friends described her as someone who would never abandon her family, especially not her youngest daughter who still needed her. On the evening of April 24, 2021, Dee spent time with family. Her friend Amy Alexander dropped off Dee's youngest daughter after a visit around 7:40 p.m. Dee told Amy, "I love you," as they parted, words that would haunt Alexander when she learned they were the last anyone heard from Dee. Dee had mentioned she planned to meet her husband afterward. The next morning, Dee's children arrived at the house to find their mother gone. Her bags were missing, but something was wrong. Her cell phone sat abandoned. Her wallet and identification remained behind. Within hours of her disappearance, every digital trace of Dee Ann Warner ceased. No phone pings, no bank transactions, no credit card activity. Dale Warner told police his wife had simply taken her things and left.
Your mom's not there? She was just there, when I was there an hour or two ago. She said, no, she's not here. I said, well, I'll be done spraying here shortly and I'll be back. So about, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes later, I got back here and I went in the house and she was gone.
He was at work when the children discovered her absence, he said. He seemed calm, collected. But for someone who supposedly walked away from her life, Dee had left behind everything she would need to start over. The marriage that appeared successful from the outside had been deteriorating for months. In December 2020, Dee's friend Stacy Brody witnessed something that would later become crucial evidence. Dee showed Brody bruises on her body. Dale had pushed her into a dresser during an argument, Dee explained. The violence was escalating. Text messages recovered later revealed that on December 6, 2020, Dee had secretly hidden car keys from Dale. She was anticipating a confrontation about divorce. She knew she needed an escape route ready. By April 2021, Dee told her daughter Raquel the marriage was over. Raquel would later testify that her mother described the relationship as extremely toxic. The business partnership that had once been the foundation of their success had become a trap. Dale controlled the finances. He monitored the operations. Leaving meant not just ending a marriage, but potentially losing her livelihood. Friends noted that Dee seemed fearful about the prospect of divorce, telling family members she couldn't picture leaving her children. Stop right here. This is the pattern we see over and over. A successful woman, financially entangled with her abuser, trying to plan an escape. The most dangerous time for any domestic violence victim is when they try to leave. What Dee didn't know was the extent to which Dale was monitoring her every move. After her disappearance, Michigan State Police data experts made a disturbing discovery. Dale had been tracking Dee's vehicle via GPS hundreds of times, not dozens, hundreds. The digital forensics painted a picture of obsessive surveillance. A GM engineer brought in to analyze the data confirmed that a GPS tracking device had been secretly installed on Dee's SUV. Every trip she made, every errand she ran, Dale knew exactly where she was. The tracking data showed a pattern of control that went far beyond normal marital concern. But the surveillance didn't stop at her vehicle. Investigators found evidence of hidden cameras installed in their home. Dale had been monitoring Dee's communications, attempting to control every aspect of her digital life. The woman who helped run a successful business couldn't make a phone call or send a text without wondering if her husband was watching. This level of monitoring serves a dual purpose in abusive relationships. It prevents the victim from seeking help or planning an escape, and it provides the abuser with information to use as ammunition. Every movement becomes suspicious. Every conversation becomes potential betrayal. By early 2021, Dee had made her decision. She couldn't live like this anymore. The hidden car keys from December were part of a larger pattern of preparation. She had also hidden divorce papers, keeping them secret from Dale while she built up the courage to file. On April 21st, 2021, Dee told her daughter Raquel she intended to file for divorce. The marriage was over, she said. After years of control and months of escalating violence, she was ready to leave. Her last known words to friends about her situation were chilling in their simplicity. "It's time to talk to a lawyer." 3 days later, she was gone. The timing wasn't coincidental. Abusers often sense when their victim is about to leave. The surveillance Dale had in place would have alerted him to any changes in Dee's patterns, any new contacts that might be lawyers or advocates. The window between a victim's decision to leave and their actual departure is when they're most vulnerable to lethal violence. A working farm in rural Michigan provides unique opportunities for concealment. Sprawling acreage, multiple outbuildings, industrial equipment, chemical storage. The Warner properties had all of these elements. The primary farm on Mugner Road where the family lived was extensive enough that initial searches could miss crucial areas. But Dale owned another property too, a second farm on Paragon Road, about 4 miles away. That secondary property contained something that would become central to this case: anhydrous ammonia tanks. These massive steel cylinders store pressurized fertilizer gas used in farming. They're common enough on agricultural land to be unremarkable. Heavy enough that moving them requires equipment. Sealed enough that whatever's inside stays hidden. After Dee vanished, local police conducted searches with K9 units. They used ground sonar. They excavated suspicious areas. But they focused on the primary property where Dee had lived. The secondary property, 4 miles away with its collection of farm equipment and chemical tanks, wasn't thoroughly searched, not for 3 years. The tank that would eventually yield its terrible secret had been repainted. Dale's company logo now decorated its exterior, making it blend in perfectly with the other equipment. It sat in a barn on that secondary property, a steel tomb hiding in plain sight while search teams combed the wrong locations. Think about this calculation. He owned multiple properties. He knew which areas investigators would search first. He had the equipment to move and seal a tank. He had 3 years to ensure his secret stayed hidden. For Dee's family, those 3 years were torture. Her brother, Greg Hardy, became the family's spokesman and advocate. He pressed authorities to expand their search. He held press conferences. He refused to let his sister become just another missing person statistic. Local police initially handled the investigation, but by August 2022, the Michigan State Police took over. The case had grown cold. No digital trail, no financial activity, no credible sightings. Dale maintained his story that Dee had simply left, and without a body, prosecutors were reluctant to file charges. But the family knew better. Dee would never abandon her youngest daughter. She would never leave without her identification. She would never cut off all contact with everyone she loved. Greg Hardy later told reporters he specifically asked authorities about checking the tanks on Dale's properties. Something about those industrial containers haunted him. In November 2023, even without a body, prosecutors finally charged Dale Warner with open murder and evidence tampering.
This is weirder than weird to me. Dee's been gone an hour to 2 hours, and the kids are here all in pain, and she's left countless times. This is weird. And then Zach's in the office going through the security cameras, trying to figure out where's Mom's at.
The circumstantial evidence, the surveillance, the abuse history, the digital silence was overwhelming, but they still didn't know where Dee was. On August 16, 2024, Michigan State Police searched the barn on Dale's Paragon Road property. What led them there after 3 years remains partially sealed in court documents, but the result was devastating. Inside one of the anhydrous ammonia tanks, they found human remains. The tank had been sealed, repainted, hidden among legitimate farm equipment. For 1,186 days, Dee Ann Warner had been entombed in that steel cylinder while her husband told anyone who would listen that she had simply walked away. On August 21, 2024, the Jackson County Medical Examiner confirmed what the family already knew. The remains were Dee Warner, identified through dental records. The cause of death, homicide by strangulation. At a press conference the next day, Greg Hardy struggled to contain his emotion. His sister had been found. The search was over. But the pain of knowing how she died and where she had been all this time was overwhelming. He called the tank a steel tomb, and accused Dale of murder without remorse. The discovery transformed the case. What had been a circumstantial murder charge based on absence of evidence became a homicide investigation with a body, a cause of death, and a crime scene. The woman who had disappeared so completely had finally been found, and her body told the story she could no longer voice. Dale Warner sits in a Lenawee County jail cell awaiting trial. His son Jaron was briefly charged as an accessory, but those charges were dropped in May 2025 due to insufficient evidence. The defense has challenged the warrants, the evidence, and the search procedures. They've requested changes of venue, claiming media coverage has made a fair trial impossible. The criminal trial is scheduled for January 27, 2026, nearly 5 years after Dee disappeared. If convicted of first-degree murder, Dale faces life in prison without parole. The evidence against him includes not just the body discovered on his property, but years of GPS tracking data, witness testimony about abuse, and the suspicious circumstances of Dee's disappearance. Parallel to the criminal case, Dee's daughter Raquel, as administrator of her mother's estate, filed a $100 million wrongful death lawsuit against Dale Warner. The civil complaint alleges he strangled Dee and hid her body. It also claims he forged her signature to steal $1.5 million in COVID relief funds meant for their business. But justice, however it comes, won't bring Dee back. Her 5 children lost their mother. Her grandchildren lost their grandmother. Her brother lost a sister he described as a very strong person who stayed in her marriage hoping she could change her husband. Dee Ann Warner's case exposes uncomfortable truths about domestic violence. Success doesn't protect you. Rural isolation can become a prison. Technology meant to connect us can be weaponized for control. The very business partnership that should have represented equality became another chain. Most chilling of all is how invisible Dee's suffering was to the outside world. This wasn't a woman who fit the stereotype of a domestic violence victim. She co-owned a business, she had financial resources, she had family support. Yet none of that saved her when she tried to leave. The anhydrous ammonia tank where Dee's body was found has become evidence for trial, but it also stands as a monument to how far someone will go to maintain control. Dale Warner allegedly chose murder over divorce, concealment over confession, and 3 years of deception over a single moment of truth. For every woman trapped in an abusive relationship, Dee's story carries a crucial warning. Leaving is the most dangerous time. The moment an abuser realizes they're losing control is when violence most often turns lethal. Dee knew this. She hid keys, she concealed divorce papers, she tried to protect herself. But on April 24, 2021, all her precautions weren't enough. The GPS tracker on her vehicle had given Dale a weapon Dee didn't know existed, perfect knowledge of her movements. The surveillance in her home meant no conversation was private. The isolation of rural Michigan meant no one heard her final moments. Dee Ann Warner deserved to see her daughter graduate. She deserved to grow old, surrounded by grandchildren. She deserved the divorce she was planning and the freedom she sought. Instead, she became another statistic in America's epidemic of intimate partner violence, a successful woman whose success couldn't save her, hidden in plain sight on the very property where she had built her life. The trial in January 2026 will determine Dale Warner's legal fate, but Dee's story has already delivered its verdict on a system where leaving an abusive marriage can cost you your life, where rural isolation enables concealment, and where even a successful businesswoman can disappear for 3 years before anyone finds her body in a farm tank, repainted to hide the horror within.